you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset.
There is a possibility on the other side of this that inflation could actually be quite low.
Just 3 years ago, the difference between renting and buying was only 1%. Fast forward to today, the nationwide average difference between renting and owning is over 52%. Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in, and today we're going to talk about what's better to rent or to own. And we're really going to analyze that data. Now, here's the good news, guys. At least in my local market in Houston, I'm now able to find wedge or a home that's sold for under market a lot easier. It's not common, but I could still find it. So I'm able to find wedge. But one of the big problems that I'm noticing with my clients right now is even though we can find wedge or homes being sold under market value, we still are struggling to find homes that cash flow. And the reason is because homes are still valued too high overall. And so we're going to go into some very good information today, you guys. We're going to go over 5 different articles, different data set, and then I'm going to also show you what kind of craziness Zillow is talking about right now. And don't forget, you guys, I'm not a financial advisor, even though my bio is as an agent or realtor, rather, a loan officer of over 2 decades. I would say loan officer stuff is actually my expertise, and a CE instructor. I absolutely love it. Husband, father, and someone that had a bankruptcy, repo, and foreclosure. But I own property right now, so everyone chill out, even though I'm renting right now. And if you guys can, please, for the effort, like the video, subscribe if you haven't. And guys, please share this info. We have way too much bullish narrative going on, a fear of missing out. We have an overwhelming amount of people that are using fear of missing out and shaming people. I see it happen all the time. Instead of these people explaining like how they purchased a home, they belittle people. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you guys really want to go into fear, I mean, think about the fear of missing out. If you buy into that fear, you've just committed yourself to a 30-year investment in one of the most toxic housing markets in history. If you succumb to the fear that I'm talking about, you should be afraid of bad realtors, of purchase contracts from builders, and you should be afraid of making the wrong decision to purchase. I hope that if I'm scaring people, that I'm scaring them enough to empower themselves to make great decisions before they spend their money. In other words, don't put the cart ahead of the horse. If you're going to buy right now, so be it, but have the right expectations. Don't have consumer debt. Understand what wedge is. Understand what cash flow is. Understand what it means to be trapped in your house. And if you're okay with those things, then you know what? Go buy. Go after the American dream of home ownership. Go start your family. But there's no doubt that right now, the discrepancy in renting versus owning is absolutely outrageous. And you guys, again, I'm renting myself right now. I own a property at 2.5%, 30-year fixed, and I'm renting. Because right now for me, and I've been in this business a long time, it makes more financial sense to rent than it does to own. And the thing is, here's the most important thing if you're renting on the sideline. It's what you're doing as you're renting. It's not like most of us are keeping our heads in the sand. Oh, when's the housing market going to crash? Let's perfectly time the bottom. No. As I'm renting, I'm understanding the trends in my local housing market. I'm looking to make an offer each and every single day. In fact, I've already made an offer every single year. I've made an offer already in 2021, 2022, and 2023. In fact, this is the only year so far, it's just started, that I haven't made an offer. But on top of that, y'all, I'm getting completely out of consumer debt. My FICO score, credit score is in the 800s. I have savings. I've taken my down payment and I've invested it in T-bills. So I'm yielding over 5% there. I've changed the way that I'm spending. So I've rebudgeted all the time. And I'm using my credit cards that give me cash back to spend. Anyways, we're going to start by going into an article from Forbes, and let's see some of their points on what they believe people should be doing right now when comparing renting versus owning. I really like this article, you guys. This is Rent or Buy Amid Housing Market Shift. Signs point to rent. And I'm going to show you some ridiculous workup that Zillow did as well. I mean, it's just so crazy what Zillow's doing. But anyways, let's read some more of this. This is important to understand, okay? Because normally it's like a slam dunk. Buy a house, right? Everyone wants to buy a house. I want to buy a house. I want you to buy a house, but I want us to do it the right way and not be sucked up into this narrative that we must own a home right now. Like, we got to go own a home right now. We cannot wait. We must go buy now. That's the narrative we hear. Anyways, for the first time in decades, this is Forbes, for the first time in decades, it's looking better to rent than to buy a home. And this goes on. In some markets, the difference between monthly house payments and monthly rent checks exceeds $1,000. And look at this right here, you guys. When I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, things are so out of control. Listen to this. That premium, remember, right now it's 52%, but that premium was only 1%, negative 1%, meaning that rent was higher than the cost of owning a home in the fourth quarter of 2021. So it's not even 3 years ago. Not even 3 years ago, it was cheaper to buy versus rent. That's why the people that were purchasing back in 2021 and in 2020, you can't compare that to purchasing real estate right now. The entire market is completely different than 2021. And it drives me crazy that bulls cannot accept that. It's not the same market. We don't have 20% equity growth in 1 year, right? Things are so much different. Look at how unaffordable it is to own. And this graph right here really shows you kind of the divergence here in renting versus owning. I mean, the cost to own has skyrocketed. And I want to let you guys know that this started skyrocketing in Q4 of 2021 all the way up to about Q3 of 2022. But remember, we didn't start QT and the tightening until March of 2022. So it started getting really, really blowing out of proportion even before the interest rates started going up. And the reason that is because of price. But the divergence, again, is huge. You can kind of see that rent has kind of remained stable, although it did kind of shoot up again Q1 2021, going from 1784 on average to 2184. So rent did go up, but I mean, owning a home was just, it went from 1994 all the way up to $3,322. On average, the cost to own is 52% higher. And that's what I'm trying to explain to you guys. Just be cautious. If you have the right expectations, that's one thing in your favor. I would be happy settling if consumers just had the right expectations. But let me ask you guys this question. Where do consumers go to get the realistic expectation on the market when the entire market, including realtors who we need good realtors, we just don't have them? Who do they go to get realistic expectations? Besides this channel, where do you go? Everyone is saying real estate just goes up. Buy now, refinance later. Where do they go? I think it's important to have empathy, especially for the buyers in 2022 and in 2023. And I see you guys in the comments. I see you guys knocking the buyers. Oh, they couldn't wait. They got greedy. But honestly, think about this, you guys. Can you really blame them? Think about a family or, a man or a woman that in their soul, they were raised to own a home. American dream. That's how you grow up. That's where you raise a family. So imagine those same people having this really unrealistic trust in the industry that's designed to manipulate them and take advantage of them. I'm just saying, you guys, it's worth a thought. It's worth slowing down a minute, showing empathy to these people, because they're the real people that are paying the price for you and I. Think about what I'm saying. All right, so they're going to make the case for renting versus buying. Mortgage costs continue to soar, with loan applications simmering on median monthly payment of $2,200 as of October, according to Mortgage Bankers Association. That's up, meaning the cost is up 9% or $143 more per month from a year ago. So it's more expensive to own right now than it was last year. In contrast, rents, however, are dropping. So price to own is going up. Renting is actually going down. Data shows that October's median monthly rent was $1,978, and that is down 1.6% from the previous month and only a 0.29% drop from a year earlier. So that's interesting. Rent is down year over year right now. That is very uncommon, obviously. So this is something new that we're going to go through right now. And honestly, with all of the apartments that are being completed, that's going to get even worse. Now, as of the third quarter, it cost $1,138 more per month. That's a lot per month to own a new home than to rent a new lease. And remember this as well, you guys, it also takes a down payment. So it could take $50,000 to $100,000 on top of the $1,100 extra payment. I mean, think about what I'm saying. It costs a lot of money to close, right? It's down payment plus closing costs. Some believe home prices will go down, and so they're holding on until that happens. We're not confident that will happen, or they're just priced out of the market. Honestly, I would say that most people are simply just priced out of the market and that they would buy right now if they could get qualified for a loan. Pretty sure that that would happen. Mobility, lower monthly cost, more appealing to some than expensive equity. So they're basically saying you got mobility when you rent, you have much lower cost than expensive equity. And when they mean by expensive equity is if you own a home right now, your property taxes is skyrocketing and your homeowner's insurance is also skyrocketing because those expenses change with the value of your house. Whether by choice or necessity, the Urban Institute has estimated that between 2020 and 2040, the number of renters will increase twice as fast as the number of homeowners. And to me, that's sad. Even though I'm saying people time out right now, don't buy, that's still sad. I want you to own, but I want you to own the right way. And remember, every city is different. Everything is localized well until it's not. A national survey of apartment rentals by local real estate analytics RealPage found 2/3 of them preferred to rent, citing lower cost and greater flexibility when relocating. That's very interesting. And then this last little paragraph from Forbes, should you rent or buy a home in 2024? The decision about whether to rent or buy a home in today's inflationary environment rests largely on what you can afford. And affordability is important, but it's not everything. But it is very, very important. And whether the home you want is available at the price, I love how they use price, in your preferred area. If you opt to buy a home, be aware that mortgage rate isn't the whole story. Thank you, Forbes, for saying that. It's also the price. You may also have to factor in additional funds for homeowners insurance, taxes, utilities, and commuting cost, also like repairs and things like that. All of that needs to be in that equation, but also how long you plan to live in the home. That's also very, very true. If the potential homeowner only plans on living there for a couple months or years, maybe they need the flexibility that renting provides at the moment, and they can buy later down the road. Ownership will always have an upside. However, as home prices remain high, equity is still being built by homeowners. So when we talk about affordability, remember there's roughly 4 things that you need to take into consideration. And some of that goes beyond a housing market crash. So the first thing is location. Okay. So obviously if you have a tiny box that you want to live in, only one subdivision, it's going to be very difficult for you to find a home of your dreams. So location is important. And then after location, it's the actual payment. And the way that you reduce payment is generally having a lower interest rate, having great credit, having good criteria and things of that nature. Now, the next thing is price, which also has to do with payment, obviously, but price is so important. And that's the one of the 4 factors that some of us are waiting on, and we see it starting to crack, but price is important. But the number one thing, you guys, the number one most important thing when it comes to affordability is your ability to elevate yourself, to improve your spending habits, to save more money, to build your credit, and to have patience, and probably even the most important thing, have a bare minimum comprehension of your local housing market. Because not all housing markets are the same. Austin is crashing in prices by my own definition of crash in prices, while other areas like San Diego are still elevated and the prices are still going up. So you got to understand what's happening in your market. Now, I want to quickly go through state by state to show you guys how much cheaper, and I'm going to go through this as fast as possible. I'm not going to cover every single state, but I want to show you state by state how much worse or better it is to rent versus own. I'm going to do that by accessing this article right here by Go Banking Rates, cost of renting versus owning a home in every state. You guys want to come back here and look at your own state? By all means, come here and take a look at this. Now, Alabama is the first. Now, this is interesting. It's saying that in Alabama, it's cheaper to own versus rent. And I will say that in Birmingham, Alabama, that is one of the metro areas that I'm tracking that is showing significant price decrease. So that's interesting. Even though it's cheaper to own there, it has one of the leading metro areas in price decline. Look it up, you guys, Birmingham. Next is Alaska. It's saying renting is cheaper. Arizona is cheaper, but here's Arkansas. Arkansas, it's saying is cheaper to own. Again, I don't know if I believe that. It's saying the average mortgage payment's $1,000, whereas the average rent payment is $1,300. If it's cheaper to own versus rent, it's usually a slam dunk. Take a look at California. California is rough. It's obviously cheaper there. To own a house, the mortgage is about $5,000. and to rent it's about $3,000. So the difference is about $2,000. Colorado also in super rough shape, $3,700, almost $3,800 to pay a mortgage, whereas renting is a little less than $2,600. Huge discrepancy there. Connecticut, the same thing, about a $600 discrepancy. So Delaware, again, renting. District of Columbia, renting. Huge discrepancy in District of Columbia, about a $2,100 difference. Take a look at Florida right here. Florida has about a $1,200 difference. Obviously, renting is cheaper. But take a look at Georgia. Georgia, it's saying it's cheaper to own. Again, I don't believe that. I've done boots on the ground in Atlanta, at least. It's way cheaper to rent. But I guess it's saying overall, it's about $250, $270 cheaper to rent in Georgia versus own. That's pretty cool. Take a look at Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii may be in the worst shape of all. It's obviously way cheaper to rent. To own a house in Hawaii is about $5,800. To rent, about $2,700. The discrepancy, $3,100 in Hawaii. That is freaking brutal, you guys. Idaho, about $1,100 discrepancy. Here's Illinois. It's saying it's cheaper to own. So this is another one cheaper to own by a significant amount. It's saying about $400, little less than $400 cheaper to own versus rent, but that's if you have a down payment. Very interesting. Also on the board is Indiana. It's about the same, saying to rent it's $1,341, to own is $1,339. Very intriguing. Iowa, renting, it's very close in Iowa. So not all states have the same level of unaffordability, but you know, this is according to this data. Kansas also saying it's cheaper to own. Kentucky, it's saying also cheaper to own. And Louisiana is also saying cheaper to own. I find it very interesting because New Orleans is experiencing massive prices crashing right now. And that's probably why it is cheaper to rent versus own. In fact, I think New Orleans right now is the #2 declining metro area, right behind San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. Take a look at the data. Maine is owning. That's crazy. So it's about the same. It's saying here to own in Maine, $2,100 versus $2,100. Maryland is renting is cheaper by about $800. Massachusetts renting is way cheaper. Michigan renting is cheaper. Minnesota renting is cheaper. But look at Mississippi. In Jackson, Mississippi, that's down 50% from peak. Go look at the data in Jackson, Mississippi. But it is saying it is cheaper to own, way cheaper to own. In fact, $931 to own in Mississippi, whereas renting $1,432. It's $500 cheaper to own, according to this, to own in Mississippi versus rent. Yet Jackson, the reason I didn't say Jackson's the #1 is it's a smaller metro area, but it has 50% decline in median sales price. Look up the numbers right now. Missouri saying renting is cheaper. Montana, cheaper. Nebraska, renting is cheaper. Nevada, renting is way cheaper, about $1,000 difference. New Hampshire, renting is cheaper. New Jersey, renting is cheaper by a lot. Discrepancy about $1,200, $1,300. New Mexico renting. Now, New York, it's saying owning. I don't believe this for a second. How could that be? Okay, so it's saying owning is $1,800 cheaper. So according to, and this is why I don't believe it, according to this, you could save $1,800 a month if you own in New York versus rent. I just don't see how that's possible, but okay. North Carolina, cheaper to rent by about $100. North Dakota, renting is cheaper. Now it's saying on Ohio, owning is cheaper. I don't know if I believe that's about the same. Now, Oklahoma is saying owning is cheaper by about $300. Very interesting. Oregon, renting is cheaper. Pennsylvania, it's also saying owning is cheaper. This is crazy by about $20. Rhode Island, renting is cheaper, a lot cheaper by about $1,200. South Carolina is also saying owning is cheaper. It's about the same, but it is saying it's cheaper. I don't know that I agree with this data. South Dakota, renting is cheaper by about $500. Tennessee, owning is cheaper. Okay, if you say so, Trey. I mean, you hear these guys, Trey? Comment below, Trey. Texas, it's saying renting is cheaper, but it's about the same. Utah, it's saying renting is cheaper by a lot, you guys, by about $1,400. Vermont, owning is cheaper. Interesting, by about $150. Virginia, owning is cheaper as well by about $10. Washington, renting. West Virginia, also owning is cheaper by about $200. This is intriguing. Wisconsin, about a $600 discrepancy. And the last one is Wyoming. It's saying renting is cheaper by a considerable amount of $1,400. Now, when it comes to the national payment to income ratio, I also want to show you guys this. They're doing these calculations based on 20% down, and this national payment to income ratio is not counting taxes and insurance. As a residential mortgage loan officer of over 20 years, I could tell you this is not how we calculate what's called DTI, or debt to income ratio. When we calculate debt to income ratio, which is the affordability factor in loan qualifications. Not only do we take the taxes and insurance, we also take the HOA amount, but they're not doing that here. But I do want to point out, you guys, that we've had a pretty sharp drop. Now, this sharp drop from 38.2% to 33.4% is a result specifically of interest rates. But I do want to point out that we're sitting at 33.4% of gross income going to paying your mortgage. This is for new buyers, remember. This is not if you've purchased in 2021, obviously, right? This is new buyers. And I also want to point out that that's basically the peak of where we were at during the GFC. And we were at about 38.2%, which was back in the mid 1980s. So in other words, I mean, the cat's out the bag, you guys. The housing market is incredibly toxic, and I will just continue to push what I believe is the solution. The solution is twofold. Number one, the solution is you, right? Work on your purchasing power, your credit, your income, your assets, and your comprehension on how this works. Protect yourself from all of these bad agents. And the other thing is the Fed. I mean, the Fed's in control. Quantitative easing created this. Now they're hoping quantitative tightening takes us out of this, but the jury is still out on that. Unfortunately, you guys, even though I think we are in control of our destiny, we're in control of our affordability, I still am not so naive to admit, like, everything that's going on right now is creating such an overwhelming burden for so many people at the bottom, including myself. I'm at the bottom. The inflation's killing me. I'm having to draw from savings. I mean, it's really super bad right now. So if you're priced out on the sideline, I just want to tell you this, okay? The system wants you to give up and wants you to keep renting. What I'm saying is our time will come. Maybe it'll come at the end of this year. I don't know. But if you're studying the data, you will know when a great deal comes up. And again, credit, income, assets. You guys, please listen to what I'm saying. I've looked at data on this. Rebudget. For the love of all that's holy. I don't care how much money you make or how much money you have saved. Rebudget. I'm going to say right now, you're spending way too much money on subscriptions and way too much money going out to eat. Prove me wrong. Take a look at your budget. And also, you guys, don't forget, I have a free home buying course. It is linked in the description. It costs you absolutely nothing. My gift to you, it's going to teach you all about the things that I've been preaching about, plus wedge, plus cash flow, plus what investors ask, and what to ask for in a seller, how loans work, all of that stuff. It's free for you. Now, other than that, guys, if you can, don't forget, like the video. And I really hope today you guys got some additional value, insights, and perspective. And if you're out there investing in real estate, you already know I wish you luck, and I hope you win.